Hello and welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing a drawing and painting of this Hart's tongue fern leaf that I've just picked from the garden. It's actually raining here this morning, so you can see it's catching the light a little bit where it's still a little bit moist. And as you can see, I've got my Bockingford pad here, and the leaf is obviously much longer than that. So I wanted to talk to you about drawing something and reducing it, or at other times you might want to draw something and make it bigger. And as a beginner, the easiest way to do that is either to halve it or to double it or to treble it. If you start trying to do it by time, 1.5 times or something a little bit more complicated, it makes it more time consuming. So with this one, I'm just going to halve it. So basically all I do to start my drawing is pop this in front of me on the table, and I will be putting it on something white so that the shadows show up underneath. That's always a good tip, is to put whatever object you're drawing on something white that's going to show you shadows. And I'm going to measure it with my pencil. So for every measurement, so if I was measuring that measurement, which I won't be from the angle I'll be actually measuring the depth of it, I will half it. So I'll think, well, that's the measurement and I'm going to need to half it there. Sorry, was that in shot of the camera? So any measurement that you do, half it and then transfer that to your page. So that's all I'm doing. And like I say, you might in some instances need to double it to make it bigger. So if you want to pop out into the garden and get a leaf or a petal or a flower, something a little bit interesting, the reason I chose this was because of these lovely curves and things. Got a super curve going on there, and you won't be able to see it just now, or you will if I turn it this way. We've got all these lovely curves along the edge, and then it's got these super colours. It's like a bit of a reddy brown colour of these veins along the back there, and obviously you've got one or two places where you've got little bits of nicks out and things which make it a bit more interesting. So Hart's tongue fern, spelt H-A-R-T-S if you're not familiar with it, and it's Hart's actually another word for a stag. So I'll pop it in front of me now and I'll start with the drawing. So when you start, just think about the main overall shape, and with this I want to get that lovely sweeping curve, and I also want to get this curve here, and some of that's going to be formed by the lines. So I won't talk through the whole video like I did in the last video. I'll just get on and draw this, and then I'll come back later on and we'll talk about putting some colour on that. But I'll be doing it times half, so reducing it by half. You'll notice I did the initial drawing in pencil and then came over the top with ink, so I'll just tell you about the ink that I used. That was an extra small Faber-Castell Pitt pen, and that's light fast and water fast, so you can paint over the top of it. And I used the extra small to get those nice fine lines in of all these tiny little veins. Now don't get bogged down counting all the veins, just get a general feel for it and look at the difference in the depth of the veins on the back here, these that curls round, compared to these tiny fine ones on the front. So just if you get that in, it's gonna help give you the feeling that this is the back of the leaf that we're seeing and this is the front of the leaf that we're seeing. So just don't get bogged down in doing every last little one. I'm just putting a bit of shadow in there. I mean, whether you put your tones in with your pen or whether you wait till you use your paint is again entirely up to you, but I'm just looking at it now and it's quite shadowy under here where it's not getting the light the same, so I'll just put a few extra lines in there to make the shade, but still going in the same direction as those veins. So I've made a few colours up. I've got sap green. This is cadmium yellow with a tiny bit of sap green added because there's quite a lot of yellow in this leaf. We've also got burnt sienna for those rusty bits on the edge of the leaves where they're damaged, and a dark shadow colour made from burnt sienna and French ultramarine. And you'll also notice that towards the end of the drawing, after I'd rubbed out the pencil lines, I used a wax resist. So that's just an ordinary wax pastel. You could use a candle, any children's Crayola, anything like that, just to cover over where the highlights are. Where the light's shining on that smooth part of the leaf and where it's a little bit dewy. But you've got to be very careful with wax resist that you get it in the right place, because you can't remove it afterwards. If you prefer, you might want to use a masking fluid, because at least then you can take it off and paint over it if you've gone wrong. So to begin with, I'm going to do the whole of the leaf in this colour, and then add the darker on top after it's dried. So I'm not working wet in wet today, I'm doing wet on dry. And there's just one or two areas that I'll leave where it's a little bit rusty. So this is a sable brush, and I'm just looking, it's a number 3. Because this is quite a small drawing, so you need quite a fine brush to get into those nooks and crannies and not to go over the line. So this is the same paper that I used the other day when we were doing the hedgehog. It's £140 or 300 gram not pressed Bockingford pad. It's quite a nice one because it's nice and absorbent but smooth enough to get a nice detailed drawing on. So just covered the whole thing apart from the stem there, and as you can see, that's those highlights I put on with the wax. So I was quite sparing with it, I haven't overdone it, nice and subtle, but you can see that the paint's not sticking to the paper there where I've put that wax resist on. So the main thing with using a wax resist is not to overdo it. So I'm hoping that's drying quite quickly and I can go on and just pop some of this into the stem. Actually, now I'm looking at the stem, it's a little bit redder than this. Could maybe add some extra red, maybe an alizarin or something to this sienna. You'll notice when I did the drawing there was lots of little sort of hairs coming off there as well that I've put on with that fine pen. So that's another good reason to use the extra small, is you can get some of those finer details in. So you want this to be dry before you go on with your stem so that it's not flowing back into there. So I'm hoping that's dry. You could leave it for a little bit longer to make sure it's absolutely dry before you put that stem in. And then I'm going to put one or two little bits of this brown where it's a bit rusty on the edges, where the petals have been weathered. So not petals, leaf edges have been weathered. and here where it's damaged. It's just gone over the line. So if you go over the line, don't worry, you can just dry your brush off and lift that up. How easy it is to lift off your paper really depends on the quality of your paper as well, and sometimes on the paints that you're using, because different colours, some are much easier to lift off than others. Red tends to stain and isn't as easy to lift off. Okay, so now I'm going to put the dark green over the top, but not over the top of the underside of the leaf. So just the top of the leaf, and then that's going to give us that differentiation between the back and the front of the leaf. So again, you want to make sure your first layer of your green is dry before you start doing this. So if you're doing a completely different leaf from a different plant, just look very carefully at the tones and the colours that you can see, and the difference between the back and the front of the leaf and where you've got those curves. And just carefully observe them. And this is actually very green. Most plants aren't just as green as you think once you start looking at them. You find a lot of different colours in there. So spend a little bit of time practicing with your colours. Get a scrap piece of paper and test out your colours against the object, because if you've got it right in front of you like this, you can just sit your paints next to your object and test them against it. Now whilst that green there is drying, I'm going to put the shadow in, but I want that to be much more wet in wet and the shadow to be much softer than the leaf. So to begin with, I'm going to just draw it in water. And the thing about this shadow beneath the stem here is it's not touching it, it's coming up like this. And that's going to give the feel of this curve much more as well. And I'll just do this a little bit at a time. So I've got a little shadow going down here, and I'm going to then pop the colour into it, and hopefully that'll make a nice soft shape. And by it being not touching, it gives us that feel that it's lifted up off the table where it's curved. Now here it is sitting more on the table, so I'll put the water much nearer to the leaf, right the way until this last curve here, and leave it a bit of a crinkly edge, so it's going to be the same as the leaf. The shadow needs to be the same as the leaf. It doesn't want to be a flat edge. And then again get some more water. So if you just do this a little bit at a time, then it isn't drying out too much. It's touching in there, I'll just do that a little bit. And then some more water around here. And then here we can see sort of daylight under there, if you like. The shadow isn't touching, because that's up off the table. And it's quite a bit lighter because there's room for that light to come through there. And the shadow itself is actually a little bit more complicated than that, because I've got several light sources, but I want to keep it simple. So that line will do for now, and then I'll just, whilst it's a little bit damp, where it's a little bit darker, I'll just pop some extra paint in and let it flow out into that water naturally. Don't do anything else other than that. You can see it's already drying quite a bit down there. So your shadows aren't going to be completely uniform in their tone. Okay, so I'm hoping now that we've done that, that this top part's going to be dry, and it feels almost dry. So then we can get some of the green. I'm actually going to get it a little bit thicker than I've had it, so I'll just get a bit more out of the pan and just paint a little bit of detail on here, down the side of this vein that goes down the centre. We've got the detail with the pen, but this is just going to finish it off. And then a bit of a thicker mix of the burnt sienna. Can get some more from the pan and do these veins here. One or two of those are actually a bit thick really. I'll just soften them off a little bit with a damp brush. I'm just going to put a bit more rust on here and here. And then to finish, I'm going to get a little bit of the cadmium yellow, more or less straight from the pan, just with a little touch of water there. And just look at where we've got one or two sort of yellowy blotches. Mostly on this side, lots of little dots and dashes. Some on here. And again, as with all my videos, really the amount of detail you put up into this is up to you. I'm always doing things quite quickly. Haven't always got the time to put loads and loads of detail in, but you could go on and put extra detail into that if you wanted, because there is an awful lot to see. You could spend all day looking at all these little veins and crinkles and shapes that you can see there. I think that just gives it a nice feel for the shape of that lovely crispy crinkly leaf of the Hart's Tongue Fern. So I hope you found that useful. I hope it gives you confidence to go out into your own garden and pick something to have a go at drawing. It can be something very simple. We often run out of ideas of things that we want to draw and paint. And you know, just pick something that's around you, because it's all good practice in observing and looking and getting into good practice with your drawing, doing a little bit every day, and that's how you're going to improve and how you're going to improve your observational skills, because drawing is all about your eyes, not necessarily your hands. It's what you see, and you need to keep looking, look again, and correct yourself as you go along. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll be back again on Monday with another demonstration tutorial. In the meantime, have a lovely weekend and bye for now.